Welcome students. Today we will solve third problem on sectioning. So let us start today's lecture. So we are given one object over here and we are asked to draw full section front view of this object. And this side is the front side of this object marked with arrowhead over here. It means we have to look at this object from this side. This is the front side of the object. Now let us first observe the dimensions of this object. So we have observer this side. That means the dimensions moving left to right of the observer are length dimensions. Dimensions moving in our direction are height dimensions. And dimensions moving away from the observer are width dimensions of this object. Now in this case we have to draw its full section front view. That means we have to cut this object along this center line. And we have to remove the front half portion of this object which is in between observer and this cutting plane. Then whatever we will left at the back, we will draw orthographic image of the left out portion, and that will be called as full section front view of this object. And we know before drawing its full section front view, we first have to identify its front view, because that will help us to draw full section front view of this object. So let us first identify its front view. So when we will look at this object from front, we will see two faces. This face, face number 1, and this face, face number 2. In the front view, we will represent these two faces as visible faces. And after that, we have to represent these holes also in the front view as hidden holes, because these are not visible from front. So in the front view, we have to show these two faces and these two hidden holes. And over here, we have to observe one very important point, that this plate shown over here is a rib. And we know when we do sectioning process, when we cut a particular rib, we never merge a rib with the other plates, and we never place section lines in the rib. That we will discuss in detail. First of all, let us identify its front view. So let us draw this face first, and let us start from this lower left corner. So let us mark this point on paper, and from that point draw a length of 100 millimeters. Then from this point we will draw height of 30 millimeters. From this point we will draw height of 30 millimeters. Now we have reached up to this point, and from that point we have to sketch a length of 30 millimeters. So from this point we will sketch a length of 30 millimeters. Then from this point we have to draw height of 20 millimeters, because total height is given to us as 30 and this height is 10. So this portion is of 20 millimeters. So from this point we will sketch a vertical line of 20 millimeters. Then from that point we have to sketch this length of 40 millimeters. So from this point sketch a length of 40 millimeters. Then from this point again we have to draw a vertical line of 20 millimeters. Then we have to sketch this length of 30 millimeter again. Then we will connect these 2 points to get the first face of this object. Now in its front view we have to represent this face also, and it is quite easy. We have to just connect these 2 points to get that face. So we have drawn both the faces. Now we have to show these holes as hidden holes in the front view. The diameter of these 2 holes is 15 mm and their location is not mentioned. It means we have to assume that this hole is in the center of this face, and this face has a length of 30 millimeters. So what we will do, we will find the mid of this 30 millimeter length and we will draw a center line. Now we will construct that hole. Dia of the hole is 15. So from center line we will measure 7.5 on both sides. From center line measure 7.5 on this side, mark a point. Then from center line measure 7.5 on this side, mark a point. And from those 2 points we will sketch dash medium line which will represent this hidden hole. Same process we will do on the other side. Means we will locate the mid of this 30 mm length and we will draw a center line. Then from center line we will measure 7.5 this side and we'll mark a point. Then from center line we'll measure 7.5 on other side, we'll mark a point, and from those 2 points we'll sketch dash medium lines which will represent the second hole. Now you can see we are ready with its front view. Now we will convert this front view into sectioned front view. For that we have to assume that object is cut along this center line and the front half portion of this object, which is in between observer and the cutting plane, is removed. Now over here, first of all, we will see, are there some openings in the object? Yes, there are two openings. Then we will see, are those openings cut by the cutting plane? Yes, both the openings are cut by the cutting plane. And we know if we have openings in a particular object and when we cut those openings with the help of cutting plane, then after removing the front half portion of the object, those openings will be visible to the observer. That means the very first step is, if there are some openings in the object, if those openings are cut by the cutting plane, then we should convert the hidden lines of those openings into continuous thick lines. So we have to convert these dash medium lines into continuous thick lines because edges of the holes will be visible to us when we will cut this object from the center line and when we will remove the front half portion of this object. Now after that we will focus on the section of the object. Now we know when we look at this object from front, we see two faces, this face and this face. Now when we will cut this object from the center line, both the plates, the material of these two plates will merge at the center and we will see a single cross section which will be a rectangle. But over here we have to make one very important observation, that this plate is a rib. We have learned in the first lecture of sectioning chapter about ribs, and we learned that if we have a rib in a particular object, we never merge rib with other plates of the object during sectioning process, and we never place section lines in the rib area, though we cut rib during sectioning in this particular example. So over here what we will do, the next step is that we will not merge these two plates and we will not show section lines in the rib. And we know the other plate is cut by the cutting plane and we have to show section lines in the cut area of that plate. So over here in this area and in this area we have to show section lines. And we know section lines are continuous thin lines drawn at 45 degrees to the horizontal. These are parallel to each other and equidistant lines. Now you can see we are ready with the full section front of this object. And this rib is not merged with the other plate and the section lines are not placed in the rib. So this is the final answer to full section front view of the given object. Now in the next part of this lecture, we will draw full section front view and its top view on the grid sheet. Welcome students. In the previous part of this lecture, we have learned about full section front of this object. And in that lecture, we have assumed this side as the front side of the object. And we have learned about its full section front view. Now in this part of the lecture, we will draw its full section front view and top view on the grid sheet. And we will draw these two views in first angle of projection. So the length of the object is 100 millimeters. So I have drawn a reference line of 15 centimeter. I have labeled its left end as capital X and right end is labeled as capital Y. As we are drawing this answer in first angle of projection, so above the reference line I have mentioned VP, below the reference line I have mentioned HP in Gothic style. So let us start with its full section front first. So for that we have to first draw this face. Let us start from this corner. And the length of this edge is of 100 millimeters. So from this reference line, we will leave around 10 millimeters gap or one row gap, and we will align our scale with this row, and we will sketch a thick line of 100 millimeters. And after that, we will draw these two heights at both ends of this 100 millimeter length, and these two vertical lines are of 30 millimeters. So from this end, draw a thick line of 30 millimeters. Then similarly from other end, draw a thick line of 30 millimeters and measure it carefully from the scale. Then after that, we have to sketch these two lengths. This length and this length is of 30 millimeters. So from this point and from that point, we will sketch two horizontal lines of 30 millimeters and draw these two lines carefully from the scale. Similarly from this side, measure 30 millimeters. Then after that, we will sketch these two vertical lines which are of 20 millimeters. So from this end, draw a thick line of 20 millimeters. And similarly from other side, draw a thick line of 20 millimeters. Then we will join these two points to get that face. After that, we will draw this face, and it is very easy. We will connect these two points with a thick horizontal line, and we will get that face. Now after this, we will represent these two holes, and we know this hole is in the center of this face. So this face has a length of 30 millimeters. So at 15 millimeter, we will mark a point, and somewhere over here also at 15 millimeters mark a point. Then align your scale with respect to those 2 points marked by us and draw a continuous and draw a chain thin line, which is the center line of that hole. And we know we draw chain thin line by using long and short dash. The long dash is of 10 millimeters, then 1 millimeter gap, 1 millimeter short dash, 1 millimeter gap, 10 millimeter long dash. And we draw this line in such a way that it is around 5 millimeters on both sides of the view. Then we have to draw this hole. Its diameter is 15. Then from this center line, measure 7.5 millimeters. From center line, measure 7.5 millimeters, mark a point. Then from center line, measure 7.5 millimeters, mark a point. Similarly, mark these 2 points at the bottom. So from center line, measure 7.5, mark a point. From center line, measure 7.5, mark a point. Then we will connect those 2 points carefully, and we will sketch a thick vertical line over here. Similarly, align with these 2 points and sketch a thick vertical line. So these two are the edges of this hole, because when we will cut this object from the center line, the edges of the hole will be visible to us. Similarly on other side. So over here, this length is of 30, mark a point at 15. Then at the bottom, again mark a point at 15. Then align your scale with respect to those 2 points and draw a chain thin line. Then again we will construct the hole, and from that center line we will measure 7.5 millimeters on both sides. We will mark a point. Similarly at the bottom, from the center line, mark 2 points on both sides at 7.5. Then align your scale with respect to those 2 points and draw thick line over here. Similarly on this side. So now we are ready with the sectioned view, but we have to show section lines now in this area, and this area. So let us place section lines carefully. So align your scale approximately at 45 degrees, draw continuous thin line. Then use these millimeter lines place these millimeter lines on the previous line drawn by us. So I have placed these millimeter lines on the previous line, then draw continuous thin line and repeat this method. Again place these millimeter lines on the previous line drawn by us, draw continuous thin line. So if you will do this, section lines will be parallel to each other and gap between two lines will be same throughout the view. You can see our scale entered in the second area which you have to show section. So in the same setting, draw a line in that area also. It will save time and orientation of lines will remain same. So this step is very important. We need patience for this step. Remember, lines must be continuous thin, parallel to each other and equidistant. And of course, we are drawing these lines at 45 degrees to the horizontal, approximately at 45 degrees. And we have to be very careful. We have to maintain same orientation throughout the view. So see, we have entered in this area. Now we should draw line in that area also in same setting. So orientation will remain same. So we are ready with the full section front. Now you can see the lines are parallel to each other, continuous thin and equidistant. And this is a rib. So in this area we will not place the section lines. Now we will draw its top view. So from all the points of the full section front view, take projectors in downward direction from all the points. And these projectors must be parallel to each other, continuous thin and perpendicular to the reference line. Now in the top view we have to show these three faces, and if we will consider these three faces, then the boundary for these three faces will be a rectangle that will have a length of 100 and width of 40. So let us start from this corner and plot that rectangle. So that corner is behind this point and that point is here. It means we will pick this projector, or we can say from this point in between these two projectors we will construct a length of 100 millimeters after leaving one row gap, and from both the ends we will draw its width is 40. So we have drawn the boundary of the top face or top view. Now we can show these three faces by drawing thick line on this projector, because this is that face. So from this edge we have taken projector, so make that edge thick over here. Similarly we will represent this face is over here. From that edge we have taken projector, so make that projector thick. So we have drawn three faces in the top. Now we know this object is symmetric about the center line. Let us draw its center line now. Total width is 40, so mid will be at 20. So at 20 millimeters we will draw the center line, and it will be a chain thin line. So we have drawn the chain thin line. Now we will represent this rib. Its width is 10. So from the center line we will measure 5 millimeters on both sides and will mark point. Similarly over here we will do this step so that we should be able to align our scale properly in horizontal position. Then we will align our scale with these 2 points and we will sketch that rib. So with these 2 points now align your scale and sketch the other edge of the rib. So we have represented that rib also. Now we will show these 2 holes. So from center line we have already taken projector. So this is the horizontal center line of the object. So this intersection is the center of that hole. So we will open compass to radius 7.5 millimeters because diameter is 15. So open compass to 7.5 millimeters. Put compass at this intersection and draw the hole carefully. It must be continuous thick. Similarly on the other side from this center, compass should be of 7.5 radius and draw the hole carefully. So we have drawn these 2 holes also in the top. Now next step is convert this center line into cutting plane line. So for that what we need to do, we need to make the last dash and the first dash of this center line thick, and on these 2 we will place arrowheads. This length can be 10 millimeters. Place close filled arrowheads of 3:1. So now this will be called as cutting plane line. The starting dash and the last dash must be thick. Now we are ready with the full section front view and top view of this object. Now what we will do, we will erase the projectors which are outside the top view, and we will erase projectors which are within the top view. And we will represent the center lines of these holes also, vertical center lines. Small center lines we will draw of around 20 millimeters. For a hole, it is necessary to show both the center lines, horizontal and vertical. So after that, we will place dimensions. So let us place its length dimension. Length is how much? It is 100 millimeters. So 1 millimeter gap, continuous thin line. Over here, we will place the length dimension. So add close filled arrows on both sides, 3:1. So it is 100. We will place it in Gothic style. After that, we will place this middle dimension. 1 millimeter gap, continuous thin line. 1 millimeter gap, continuous thin line. Over here, we will place a length of 40 millimeters. Close filled arrows on both sides. Over here, we will write 40. Now, no need to place these 2 length dimensions because we can calculate these two. 100 minus 40 divided by 2. After that, we will place width dimensions so that we can place this side. 1 millimeter gap, continuous thin line. 1 millimeter gap, continuous thin line. And over here we can add dimension line. So width is of 40. Then after that we will place this width dimension, so that we can place over here 1 meter gap continuous thin line, 1 meter gap continuous thin line from this point. So over here we can place its width as 10. So we are ready with the width dimensions also. Let us place height dimensions. So over here we can mention its height as 30. Then we will place this height. So leave 1 meter gap over here, continuous thin line. Then we will add dimension 9 over here. So gap should almost be same. And this is 10. After that, we should show the diameter of these holes. 1 meter gap, continuous thin line. 1 meter gap, continuous thin line. Similarly over here, 1 meter gap, continuous thin line from both the edges of the hole. Then over here we will place two dimension lines in line, and we will add closed filled arrowheads. And we will mention 5, 15. So we have placed all the dimensions. We have drawn full section front, top. We have placed length dimensions, width dimensions, and height dimensions. I hope this answer is clear to you. Thank you very much.